But sir, the odds of creating a faithful likeness to a fan favourite character in Star Wars are 3,720 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
Hi guys, welcome to Planet Mithril. My name is Mithril. Finally, I get to paint the Han Solo model that all avid Star Wars hobbyists have been yearning for ages. Yes, we've had him in his Endor getup, we've had him in Stormtrooper costumes, uniforms, but I do believe this is the first time we've ever had a sculpt which depicts him in his iconic Episode 4 gear. Massive thanks to my friend Oz over at Rampage Games for hooking me up with my fix of smugglers and scoundrels for this video. The black waistcoat over the beige shirt and those synonymous stripes over the brown chocolatey trousers, not to mention that ridiculous hair, am I right? This is #MyHanSolo. The key with such an iconic model and character is to try and capture them and bring them out their features as best as you possibly can. The more accurate you can be with this, then the better the model will look overall. Particularly with the face, as if you can nail this and you're basically 50% of the way there. With such characterful features, I'm sure this won't be a problem. I'm working my Han off a grey undercoat with Mechanica Standard Grey prior to painting. Brushes ready guys, let's get painting. The face and hands, I'm beginning by base coating using pink flesh. Han's perfectly coiffed hair is being given a base coat now using brown leather. His shirt is being picked out with a base coat that's made up with a 50-50 mix of nacre and rainy grey. Giving his waistcoat a slightly off black base coat now with a 2-to-1 mix of black and violet. Whereas the blaster and boots are being base coated using pure black. The final base coat stage is giving his trousers a coat of African shadow. Now, no model has the right to look so beautifully sculpted and, well, beautiful. Damn it, Harrison! So my goal in this tutorial is to make Han as ugly as I possibly can. Just kidding, that's basically impossible. I'm applying an initial recessed shade to the face and finger gaps with a 2-to-1 mix of pink flesh and bloodfest crimson. Being careful not to add too much crimson as it can very quickly overpower the flesh tone. With my shade in place, I'm going to be building up the initial shape and features of his face and hands by using basic flesh, leaving the recessed shade showing in the recesses as best I can. Seriously, cheekbones you can cut yourself on. Mind my brush. Continuing to layer up the details of Han's face and hands now with a rough 4-to-1 mix of basic flesh and pale skin. Again, adding the pale skin in gradually so as to not oversaturate the fleshy tones of the basic flesh paint. You can see here I'm starting to focus on further defining his brow, cheekbones, ouch, nose and jawline further, whilst defining the tendons and structure of his hands, fingers and knuckles. gradually building up these highlights by adding more pale skin into the mix until you reach the final extreme edge highlight using pure pale skin. Here I'm keeping this super tight and sparse as it really is quite a bright paint, so I'm just using this to accentuate the sharpest, most prominent features. His eyes I'm carefully picking out using black, and finishing off using my heavy white. So hang on, that can't be fair. How can somebody be this handsome and have such excellent looking hair? Damn it, Harrison! All joking aside, the hand sculpt has some very, very well sculpted and textured hair, so giving this the full body and fullness it needs really won't be too much of an issue. To begin with, the hair is being given an all-over shade using diluted Arbuckle's brown. The slight mahogany tone of the shade will complement the richer, more luscious browns I'll be using in a minute to layer and highlight. Making sure this is thoroughly dry before continuing, I'm going to apply a blocking layer to define the initial texture of hair now with a 1-to-1 mix of brown leather and Dubai brown. You can see here I'm following the flow and grain of the hair with my brush, trying my best to leave the arbuckles showing in the recesses. Now you should be able to see the natural wave of Solo's bouncy locks starting to take shape already. I'm going to continue building up the texture by layering over using pure Dubai brown. If possible, trying to keep this application a little tighter just to let the blocking layer show underneath slightly. Now I'm going to be building up the upper layers of Solo's hair, starting with a highlight mix of 3 parts Dubai brown to 1 part light skin. This will just desaturate the richness of the brown slightly and give the upper levels of his hair a slight sun bleached look, letting the light shine over the crests and wave of his hair. I've continued building up the highlights with small additions of light skin into the mix until I've reached a level I'm happy with. At this point it was around about a 3-to-1 ratio in favour of the light skin over the brown. Here you can see I'm applying this as a super fine edged and dot highlight, just picking out the more prominent crests of hair, the brow line and the tips. You can see that just by finishing the face and hair, that Han's character is really starting to shine through. Now onto his characteristic outfit. The recessed folds of the shirt, as well as the elbow creases and sides facing his torso, are being given a manual shade using brown grey. Opting for this over an all-over shade so that the base coat maintains its smooth consistency going forward. The bulk of the white shirt now I'm giving a layer using nacre. Now this will need to be diluted slightly and will probably require a few passes to keep the smooth crisp finish that you want from these white areas. It's important to let every coat dry before applying another, as you don't want to cause any unsightly blemishes or streaks. These will be super difficult to fix if they do occur. I'm applying my first highlight now with a 1-to-1 mix of nacre and white. Now I made quite a quick jump to quite a large concentration of white in my mix, which means once diluted it will need a few more layers as per the previous stage. You can add the white more gradually if you wish, which will help with the consistency of the paint and give you slightly more control over where this is going on the model. At this stage, however, you choose. You're looking to further define Han's frame beneath the cloth, highlighting in particular the neckline, elbow creases, the creases down the front and any stress points over the material. My final highlight is quite simply an extreme edge highlight using pure white, again slightly diluted to make the paint behave a little bit better. As you can see now, I'm just trying to frame the edges of the collar, frame the shape of the arms and highlight the uppermost folds and creases in the material. The waistcoat is being given an all-over shade using diluted black. Now as the base coat used a slightly off black, you'll notice this does help to naturally shade the recesses once it dries. Be extremely careful though, remember the white shirt underneath. Honestly, there's no real great way to tackle this model, so I decided to work from the inside out. With the shade thoroughly dry, I'm going to layer in the main body of the waistcoat now with a 2-to-1 mix of violet and black. You may find this looks too purple. If this is the case, then feel free to drop back the amount of violet in the mix until you're happy. As you can see here, I'm blocking out the pockets and the patches whilst layering the material, leaving the shade showing in the recesses. For the initial layers now, I'm adding in more purple. That's right, I'm all sorts of crazy, but I found that this really helps bring up the tone of the black much more naturally than greys and whites would, and given the texture and look of the material, gives the best look overall, particularly when it comes to the later highlights. Now I'm super happy with how Han's jacket is coming along. The highlight stages now, I'm going to be applying sharper than I would normally. Again, this helps to reinforce the texture and shine of the jacket material and contrast well against the smoothness of the shirt and soon to be trousers. I'm applying my first highlight with a 4-to-1 mix of the previous layer mix and Arctic blue, keeping the concentration of this smaller to begin with as I don't want to blow out the tone too early on. I'm framing here any creases, stress points, the outline of the pockets and around the edges of the jacket itself. Following the same mentality as I have for the hair and the shirt, continue to add more Arctic blue in the mix for the first few highlights until you reach a point where you're happy. My mix finished at a rough 3-to-2 ratio in favour of the Arctic and was just applied as a razor thin edge highlight to finish off Han's iconic waistcoat. Now I'm painting my Han's trousers with a yellow stripe, which is more fitting of his appearance in Return of the Jedi rather than the blue with the red stripe for A New Hope. A personal choice, and mainly because the box is meant to be set on Endor with the Endor guard and Chewie as well, so I thought this best represented that. To begin with, the trousers are getting an all-over shade using fairly heavily diluted black leather, working this into all the creases and recesses. The main body of the trousers now I'm building back up with a 1-to-1 mix of African shadow and Indian shadow, leaving the black leather showing as many creases and recesses as possible. Lovely rich browns with a slight pastel hue, which is exactly what I want to contrast the bright white of the shirt and crispness of the waist jacket. I'm adding in light skin again to the previous layer mix to build up the highlights. Again, as usual, starting with a relatively small concentration to make sure I have as much control over the tone and colour as possible. As I continue to build the highlights, by the time I've reached the penultimate highlight stage, my mix will be at least 3 parts light skin to 1 part Indian African shadow mix. The final extreme edge highlight I'm now applying using pure pink flesh, focusing on just finalising the shape and main body of the trousers, as well as the hems and creases of material. The yellow stripe that runs down this side I'm very carefully picking out with a solid line of Iroko, using the side of my brush here, as you can see, to make sure I have as much control over this as I possibly can. And I'm very carefully now just drawing my brush in thin horizontal lines down the length of the yellow stripe with high key yellow. This gives the segmented look to the stripe which matches his look from the films. Han's belt around his waist, blaster holster and any other straps I'm carefully picking out using brown leather. These are then being given a targeted shade using Arbuckle's brown, centering this in the middle of the straps as much as I can do. I'm now applying a careful edge highlight over the upper and lower edges of the straps with a 1-to-1 mix of brown leather and Iroko. The boots and blaster casing and giving a layer using graphene grey. Followed again by an edge highlight, framing the shape of the boots and creating light reflections of the sharpest points of the blaster casing using Miskatonic Grey. Finally, any metallic details over Han, belt buckles, buttons and the metallic blaster details I'm painting using thrashed metal. And spot highlighting these areas using speed metal. Oh, scruffy looking. Well, my fellow scoundrels, it certainly isn't this fella here. Han Solo, our favourite scoundrel, general and hero in his iconic waistcoat look, is finally finished and ready to take his place alongside his friends at the spearhead of the rebellion, doing what he can in his own cheeky, cunning way to bring about the destruction of the Galactic Empire. For tips on how I based Han here, please head over to my Shatterpoint basing tutorials video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more content, and hit that bell with the force of a falcon going 12 parsecs, whatever that means. And as always, take care and happy hobbying. Bye guys.